Hello, I'm Charles Kovess, Australasia's passion provocateur. Welcome to this week's episode of The Charles Kovess Show, whether you're watching on YouTube or Rumble or listening via one of the many podcast channels. This is episode 199. Looks like we better have a big celebration for episode 200. We remind you we have a new format for this show. The foundational principles that lie at the heart of the show are not changing. Instead of exploring one big idea each week, I now discuss 2 or 3 big impact issues and then explore how the principles of this show can be used by you to elegantly and effectively handle those issues. I will share whatever resources I consider to be helpful to you in handling such issues. The show notes now give you links to the foundational principles of the show and more background about me. And secondly, links to my websites where there are some wonderful resources available to you, including details of the self-awareness and passion quest. So, let's discuss this week's big impact issues and how to elegantly handle them using the principles of the self-awareness and passion quest. Firstly, the decision of the New York Supreme Court in the Donald Trump trial, where Donald Trump was convicted of 34 crimes. This decision is a disgrace. This decision is a fraud. This decision is corrupt. This decision will be overturned on appeal, in my judgment. And remember that I've been a lawyer for 20 years and a legal strategist for more years than that. This decision demonstrates the corruption of the New York judge who heard the case. Let me give you some of the reasons why I hold the views that I have just expressed. Firstly, the charges that Trump was charged with were in fact misdemeanors, not felonies. The New York Attorney General, Alvin Bragg, pulled an absolute sleight of hand. Secondly, references to other crimes committed by Trump in the context of an election is another sleight of hand. Thirdly, Donald Trump was not allowed to put the defense that he wanted to put. The judge disallowed him from doing so. Fourthly, the jury relied on the testimony of Michael Cohen, a convicted liar. Fifthly, the prosecutor repeatedly made unsubstantiated claims against Donald Trump contrary to the rules of law. Sixthly, the behaviour of the judge was corrupt. Seventhly, the behaviour of the judge in the directions he gave to the jury was corrupt. This case is going to have a big impact on the United States. What I'm pleased to share with you is that some judges are pushing back. I call on all judges at all levels of society to properly apply the rule of law. One judge who's pushing back is not so much a judge but a tribunal member. In Victoria, the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal, Caitlin English, who has knocked back the Victorian Labor government's attempts to prevent freedom of information applications to disclose the basis on which the Victorian government made its outrageous decisions over the last 4 years. Well done, Caitlin. Again, I call on all judges to properly apply the rule of law. The rule of law is your protection of your rights and your freedoms. What's happening to the rule of law is simply outrageous. Second matter. The Australian Senate is having an inquiry into excess deaths in this country. You and I know where those excess deaths come from. Philip Altman is a wonderful, experienced pharmaceutical expert who has railed against the actions of governments locally and globally over the last 4 years in relation to you know what. In his Substack this week, he points out that Jane Holton must be called before the Senate inquiry. he shares the comment of one of his readers on his Substack, and I commend Philip Altman for publishing it. Jane Holton, remember that name. It's an important name to remember. She is one of the most senior health bureaucrats in Australia and globally. If the Senate does not call Jane Holton to give evidence, then the inquiry is not an inquiry at all, but theatre. Let me give you a couple of key points about Jane Holton. She was an eminent and very influential member of Scott Morrison's, at the time Prime Minister of Australia, National C-19 Coordination Commission that advocated the no jab, no job protocols. Jane Holton was chair of the Intergovernmental Meeting on Pandemic Preparedness in 2007 and 2009. She was Commissioner of the Australian Commission on Safety and Quality in Healthcare between 2006 and 2014, 8 years. She was an active participant in the famous October 2019 Event 201 Pandemic Response Simulation. Jane Holton is the director of the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation, University of Washington in USA, that's funded by Bill Gates. Jane Holton was president of the World Health Assembly in 2007. That is the key action body of the World Health Organization. And she was chair of the executive board of the World Health Organization from 2013 to 2014 and a board member from 2004 to 2007 and has been since 2012. As Philip Altman's Substack says, perhaps more important than all of those above positions, Jane Holton will understand our Parliament's and the inquiry's ethical obligation to prevent excess deaths. Thanks to her advisory role with the Centre for Applied Philosophy and Public Ethics since 2007, that's 17 years. If Jane Holton is not called, the inquiry is not a real inquiry at all. So I urge you to bring this matter to the attention of your local influencers. The way that we do that is by holding these politicians and bureaucrats to account. You've heard me say that before in the context of Daniel Andrews, former Premier of Victoria. I call him Dick Dan, short for Dictator Dan, but Dick as well. As members of our communities, respective communities, we have to make a decision to hold politicians and bureaucrats to account, regardless of whether they are in their positions or they have retired. I've said this before, I will keep saying it. We have to be ready to stand up for proper application of law, legal principles, and the rule of law. There is no indemnity available for criminal actions. Otherwise, all these politicians would give themselves indemnity to do whatever they like. Same with the bureaucrats. They are protected for mistakes. They're not protected for criminal activities. So the mantra is track Dick Dan, track every politician and bureaucrat who behaves badly. The next big impact issue is the work done by Julian Gillespie and his team in the jabs that were foisted on humanity that in fact are genetically modified organisms. And a major case was run in the federal court before Judge Helen Rofe, who for a number of decades has represented Pfizer, and Pfizer was the defendant in the case. Judge Rofe did not declare her links to Pfizer. Julian Gillespie and Senator Malcolm Roberts have launched a hearing in the Senate of Australia to have Judge Rofe dismissed for misconduct under Section 72 of the Constitution. Again, I urge you to take action, to not put up with this attack on legal principles. Visit the website section72.au and add your voice to those railing against judges who are corrupt, who are biased, who do not declare their vested interests. Your rights and liberties are at risk. Why is the rule of law so important? Because law enables you to have justice. And secondly, if we don't stand up in our communities for unjust actions, then people who impose unjust actions get away with it. And that doesn't just mean courts. It means anybody. For example, people attacking Jews in your country for what's happening in Israel and Gaza. How would you like that to happen? For you to ignore an innocent Jewish person in Melbourne, in Australia, walking down the street or trying to go to university, being attacked, is that justice? Do you think that's justice? I don't. I know it's not just. If we let unjust activities happen, we are colluding in those unjust activities. This is a crucial element to the way you live your life. There's no point living your passion if you're not functioning in a lawful, well-governed society. It is up to us with human beings uniting in a fight for justice. It will prevent injustice. And injustice, at the end of the day, will come and bite you on your bum. A couple of other matters I want to bring to your attention. On Thursday this week, I presented an award at the Cannabis Awards. These are awards for medicinal cannabis and industrial hemp activities, anything to do with cannabis. It was an extraordinary evening, amazing companies doing amazing things in Australia. Look up the website cannabiz, ending biz.com.au for the award winners. There's an amazing range of medicinal cannabis and industrial hemp products, applications, and solutions. Don't struggle with pain. Don't struggle with anxiety. Don't struggle with sleep deprivation. There are many cannabis solutions available for you. My guests this week on TNT Radio, Inga Fulmick, the wife of Rainer Fulmick, who's improperly in jail in Germany, having been kidnapped by the German government, and Roger Bettel, a media expert who's close to Rainer Fulmick, and who I will be interviewing both of them about the injustices that are being imposed on Rainer Fulmick. And TNT Radio is going to be launching a campaign to publicise the injustices that are being imposed on Rainer. My second guest, I'm again doing 2 hours, is Michael Huber, who will be talking about the problems of psychiatrists in Australia, the availability of psychiatric care, and a personal story of challenges that he has faced. That's from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday night. So, some resources. I'll share a quote with you first. Don't ask what one man or one woman can do. Ask what 8 billion united men and women can do. When we unite as men and women, we are extraordinarily powerful. Resources this week. 2 books by Wendy Daniel. The V Word, I don't want to mention it, wonderful book. And secondly, Detox After COVID and Thrive. Wendy Daniel doing great work. She's not a doctor, great researcher. Secondly, as you know, I moderate 2 global meetings a week for the Medical Doctors for COVID Ethics International. And this week, one of the guests was Yevgeny Legodin, who is a refugee from Russia to the UK. He's a doctor and he's studying to become a psychiatrist. Maybe I should have some words to him about psychiatry. But his hobby has been putting together a list of the top 100 great books. And there's some amazing books on that list. It's a great reminder. And my reminder and my wish for you is that you choose wisely the books that you read. So the great books from human history, is a choice that you have versus reading modern day crap. I've read many of these top 100 books, but I haven't heard of many of them going, wow, that's interesting. So you can look him up on Twitter, which is now called x.com. Evgeny Legedin, Legedin. Search him, follow him. You can find that 100 books list, or you can send me an email to charles@coves.com, and I will happily share that list with you. So, I hope today's show makes a beneficial difference to your life, a life that I believe is meant to be all that you are capable of making of it. Visit the show notes for the foundational principles and my background, and also the links to my websites where there are some wonderful free resources for you, including details of the self-awareness and passion quest. Again, thanks for watching or listening, and may your week be full of passion, challenge, enjoyment, embracing the challenges that fall before you, and ever increasing self-awareness. Have a great week. See you next week. Bye.